everyone, Buzz here from Buzzing Around the World. Today I'm going to show you how to visit beautiful Lake Bled, Slovenia. Lake Bled is one of Slovenia's top attractions, and when you arrive, you will think it's something out of a fairy tale. Before I get into the top attractions at Lake Bled, let me tell you about how to get to Lake Bled. There are three main ways to get to Lake Bled from the Slovenian capital of Ljubljana. The first is by bus. A bus ride from Ljubljana bus station, which is adjacent to the train station, costs just €5 and takes a little over an hour. If you have a car or a car rental, it is about a 50-minute drive from Ljubljana via Route E61. The third method to get to Lake Bled from Ljubljana is by train. There are two train stations, and one of them is much closer. During my visit, Bled Jezero, the closer of the two stations, was closed due to track maintenance. So I took the train to the other station, Lesce-Bled Station, which is about a 4.5-kilometer walk from Lake Bled. When I arrived, rather than wait for a bus, I decided to walk the 4.5 kilometers. The walk was beautiful and easy. All I had to do was follow the signs. One of the highlights was crossing the Sava River. If I would have opted to take the bus, I would have missed out on this beautiful scenery. About halfway, I came across the detour. This detour added a few extra kilometers, but also took me through a beautiful little Slovenian town. A little over 90 minutes from leaving the train station, I finally arrived at the town of Bled. After walking through the outskirts of Bled, I came into the touristy area of the town. A few minutes later, I arrived at the shores of beautiful Lake Bled. I have a separate video that I created that has a much longer version of the walk from Bled Lesce Station to Lake Bled. I will link that video in the description. So I had reached my destination, Lake Bled, Slovenia. There were a few different things I wanted to do and see. These included visiting Bled Castle, walking around Lake Bled, and possibly a trip to Bled Island. After a few minutes looking at the map, I decided that a good first stop would be Bled Castle. Bled Castle sits high atop the bluffs of Lake Bled and can be reached by a path from the shores of Lake Bled. To get to Bled Castle, I would have to begin my trip on the path around the perimeter of the lake. As I walked around the Lake Bled perimeter path, I enjoyed the beautiful sunny December day. I tried to stop along the way and enjoy everything that Lake Bled had to offer. I even stopped to watch a family of ducks play in the water, as well as observe a giant white goose. One piece of advice I have for anyone who circles Lake Bled is to take your time. There are so many things to see, including this strangely shaped tree. Continuing my way towards Bled Castle, I came across a business that rents boats. With a cost of at least €30 an hour, I decided against renting a boat to go to Bled Island. A few minutes later, I came across the path to Bled Castle. According to the sign, it should take around 15 minutes to complete the hike. I walked up a series of switchbacks that were difficult, but were nothing I couldn't handle. Following the switchbacks are quite a few flights of stairs. It took me just over 20 minutes to complete this hike, including the time to stop and take photos and film these video clips. Before I show you highlights of my visit to Bled Castle, let's take a second to appreciate the view of Lake Bled from the Bled Castle bluff. If you are enjoying this video, please smash that like button and hit subscribe. The top of the path from the shores of Lake Bled is a sort of false summit, as there is still a bit of uphill hiking left. It took about another 5 minutes to reach the ticket office. The cost to enter Bled Castle is €17. While there is a small museum, the biggest reason to visit Bled Castle is for the spectacular views. There are multiple viewing points throughout the castle, and each one is at a slightly higher elevation. While watching these beautiful views, let me take a few minutes to tell you about Bled Castle. Bled Castle was first mentioned in 1011 and is one of the oldest castles in Slovenia. Originally built by the Bishop of Brixen, Bled Castle was used more for defensive purposes than a residence. Since the bishops never lived at Bled Castle, it does not have any spectacular staterooms or residences. Still, I recommend a visit to Bled Castle, as its grounds offer the best views of Lake Bled. During a visit to Bled Castle, be sure to go up the steps to the higher viewing area. I'm going to stop talking for a moment so you can fully appreciate these beautiful views. There are a few sights worth seeing inside the Bled Castle. My favorite is the Bled Castle Chapel. The Bled Castle Chapel is famous for its pink-colored ceiling. Wow, the Bled Castle Chapel. Try saying that 3 times fast. In addition to the beautiful views of Lake Bled, there is another wall of Bled Castle that offers views looking in the opposite direction of the lake. To reach this location, I went up the stairs towards the pointed rotunda. Be sure to stop and look through the windows, as well as the archer's holes. There are great views of the surrounding cities and signs that tell you which city you are looking at. I spent about an hour at Bled Castle, not counting the time it took to hike to the entrance. It was getting close to 12 o'clock noon, and I wanted to stop at the Christmas markets and get something to eat. So I said goodbye to Bled Castle and retraced my steps down the stairs and series of switchbacks. This time, instead of taking the final switchbacks to the shores of Lake Bled, I decided to take a detour towards the St. Martina Parish Church. The St. Martina Parish Church is the less famous of the 2 churches near Lake Bled. From the church, it was a short walk back to the Christmas markets, where I had a wonderful lunch of beef, vegetables, and potatoes. After lunch, it was now time for the highlight of my trip to Lake Bled, completing the 6-kilometer walk around the lake. The path around Lake Bled typically takes about 1.5 to 2 hours to complete. Obviously, it will take much longer if you are stopping along the way. I highly recommend the walk around Lake Bled for anyone who is able to walk the 6 kilometers. For the most part, the walk is flat, and the path is a mix of pavement, crushed stone, and boardwalk. Lake Bled looks so different from each shoreline, and it will almost look like you are at a different lake. Situated in the center of Lake Bled is Bled Island, which appears to be directly out of a fairy tale. Located on Bled Island is Bled Island Church, also known as the Church of the Assumption Mary or Our Lady of the Lake. Visitors can take a pletna boat ride to the shores of Bled Island, or rent a boat and row themselves. I did not visit Bled Island during my trip to Lake Bled. Instead, I decided to walk around Lake Bled and see Bled Island from multiple angles. If you are not going to take a boat to Bled Island, be sure to walk the western shore of Lake Bled, as it provides the best views of the island. One of the best things about a trip to Lake Bled is that there are very few costs associated with visiting the lake. For those who are budget travelers, Lake Bled can be seen practically for free. By taking the bus and bringing a lunch, tourists can visit Lake Bled for under 15 euros per person. While walking around the lake is free, there is one expense you may not be able to avoid, and that is the fee to use the restroom. There are multiple restrooms located on the perimeter path, and those restrooms charge anywhere from 50 European cents to €1 per use. As I finished my walk around Lake Bled, I stopped to provide some live commentary on how my trip to Lake Bled was going.
Hi everybody from Lake Bled, Slovenia. I've spent most of the day here. I caught a train that left around 7 in the morning, and then I went to the further away train station, which was about a 4.5 kilometer walk down to Lake Bled, but there was a detour which added about 3 kilometers. It's about 3 p.m. now. I am almost all the way around the lake. They're doing some work on the train tracks, so I think I'm going to try to take the bus back to Ljubljana.
I took the bus back to Ljubljana, which was much easier than the train. There are buses that run basically every hour, and during peak times there are multiple buses per hour. While schedules can be hard to find, you can simply walk to the bus station and wait for a bus to Ljubljana. Tickets can be purchased on the bus for cash. Be sure to have euros available, as the driver does not take credit cards. About an hour later, I arrived at Ljubljana bus station, ending my one-day journey to Lake Bled.
If you enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button and feel free to subscribe. Until next time, this is Buzz from Lake Bled, Slovenia. Happy travels.